You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGachy, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the podcast, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I think I've got a really good one here for you with my buddy Cohen Hartman, otherwise known as SpiralCaster. Great dude, and I really had a incredible time talking to him. Before we get into that episode, though, just a little bit of house cleaning and whatnot, as sometimes has to occur. So, first of all, I have had a few messages asking about the pedal giveaway we were doing a few weeks ago, and yes, there has been a winner. That person is not on social media, so I did not bother doing an announcement in the traditional way, but Jack Malarkey, which is not his real name, but is how he likes to be addressed publicly, won the pedal, the Stir of Echoes. And that probably sounds like a bunch of malarkey to you, but hey, trust me, I'm sending him the pedal. I've got plenty of pedals. It's not like I am sitting there hoarding all the love pedal delays. So he is getting that. I promise. And yes, he did win that fair and square. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's see. What else do we have? Oh yes. Thank you very much to everyone who has been buying gear through tonemob.com/Sweetwater. That has been enormously helpful. Sweetwater is very kind with the percentage they share with their affiliates, and everybody, seriously, thank you so much. I know it takes a little bit of extra brain juice to try to remember tonemob.com/Sweetwater. That is the place to go for anything that Sweetwater carries, and for anything else, if you're shopping around for some vintage acts, go to tonemob.com/reverb, and a little bit of those purchases come back and help support the show, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, all that good stuff. So please do that if you can, because it really helps out a lot over here. So yeah, I think that's probably good enough. I mean, I suppose I could ask you just one more time, if you haven't had a chance yet, to go back and listen to the record I put out as a podcast. It's just a couple episodes back in this very same podcast player, wherever you're hearing this. It is called Tom, Do You Have Anything Sharp on You? And it's a very strange, weird audio experience. And if you like that kind of thing, it's there for you. And that is the sole place it will be available for the next 30 days. Although we might be doing a vinyl release, maybe. You didn't hear it from me, but keep your ears peeled. That's the thing, right? Wait, no. Ears to the ground, eyes peeled, whatever. I got it screwed up. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. And one more thing. I was just on an episode of one of my favorite podcasts, the Pure Pleasure Podcast. You've probably heard Dewey on this before. He was on quite a while back. I don't know how many episodes ago he was on, but he was, and it was fantastic. And then he allowed me to come onto his podcast, and we had a great chat. So if you want to go check that out when you're done with this episode, I recommend you do just that if you need more of me blabbing in your life. Okay, without further ado, let's get into this episode with Mr. Cohen Hartman. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar things occasionally, once in a while, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Cohen Hartman, who you might know better as SpiralCaster. What's going on, dude?
Hey, how's it going, Blake? Thanks for having me on here today.
Yes, I know. It's not like you're in the comfort of your own space. You're right here with me, snuggled up nice and close, gazing longingly into each other's eyes.
I can smell you right now.
Good thing I showered. That would have been rough. Would have been a bad deal. I was rolling around in my attic the other day, and that just is a wonderful scent.
You use that Dr. Squatch, don't you?
I probably should. It seems
According
like
to them, everything else, is bad, and you should.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've been tempted before. I'm like, this is good advertising. This is
Right.
starting to make me question my my normal Dove soap. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, man, I'm really excited to have you on. I've been watching you for, I don't know, I feel like it's been at least 2 years doing, demos, and mostly demos. That's what I know you from, is doing really great sounding, great riffy demos. And then we met briefly at the EQD party in 2019. No, that was 2020. It was 2020.
It was right before all this craziness went down. Yeah.
It's hard for me to imagine that was actually in 2020, because in my mind, 2020, we didn't do anything like that. We didn't have get-togethers in 2020, but that was right before.
I know, and I wanted to bring that up because it's funny. I remember meeting you, and I'm a little embarrassed just because I felt like such a fish out of water. I showed up to NAMM on a whim. It was already happening. I think I came on Saturday, right? And they run Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And on Friday, I was sitting in my studio space and looking through my Instagram feed. Everybody I knew was at NAMM. I had been in the game for like a little less than a year at that point. And I have a friend who works for Personas, which is a local company for me. They're here in Baton Rouge. And I was just texting him. I was like, man, because I knew he was going, and he was going for Saturday and Sunday, and he was going to leave on a plane the next morning. And I was just like, I wish I could come with you. And he was like, dude, I'll get you a pass. And then,
well, there you go.
Yeah. And that turned into like a $700 plane ticket. And I didn't even know where I was rooming that night. But so I was a little out of my element. And I don't think I wasn't familiar with you at the time. There were a lot of things I didn't know, a lot of people I didn't follow yet, and so I apologize if we didn't get to talk a whole lot. I was trying to figure out at that EQD party what my place was, or who to talk to, or what was. Nobody knew who I was.
I did. I knew who you were.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, at the time, I was doing a lot of work for Solid Gold Effects, and and they, they're a great company and really like all their stuff. But at the time, I was doing a lot of work for them, and so Alex, who used to work there, also he is who introduced me to your work. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how I got familiar.
I did know that about you at the time because Alex and I are close. We talk, probably multiple times a week with 30-minute phone calls.
Mm-hmm. Sounds about right.
Yeah. But no, I love the guy. And at the time I was already working deeply with him, and he had started Mass, working for Mass, a few months before that. So yeah. It is crazy to think that was already 2020. And, we leave there, we have this feeling of like things are normal, and then everything crashes right after that.
It's so bizarre. It's such like I said, in my mind, that was almost 2019. I was like, no, that can't have been 2020. But nothing cool happened in 2020.
No, something told me I needed to be there. I needed to experience, and I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that little, Geppetto, what's the guy in Pinocchio that's like always hopping on his shoulder and telling him
Jiminy Cricket.
Jiminy Cricket, right. Geppetto's the old man. Jiminy Cricket told me to go, and I'm glad, because I haven't been able to interact with any of you people in physical space, except for right now. We're sitting right next to each other, obviously.
Of course, yeah. We don't want to break the illusion, everyone.
Yeah.
But no, it's just NAMM is a really interesting thing, and I've been talking a lot about NAMM in particular with people, mostly off the air. But it's such a dinosaur of an event, and I think a lot of manufacturers this year, a lot of brands have discovered, if they did not already know, that not going to NAMM not existing for all intents and purposes, isn't really affecting their business. And that's something that, I work with a lot of different companies in this space, and that is always one of the big questions. Like, do we want to do NAMM? Do we want to spend?
It's expensive.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing it as cheap as possible at Winter NAMM, by the time you pay people to, your employees, I mean, even if you're doing it by yourself, by the time you get the booth space, you do everything, you're looking at 8-10 grand bare minimum. And
it is
nuts.
It is. And on top of that, it's kind of a revealing sort of event. At least it was for me from an outsider perspective, coming into, the industry. There's a lot to learn. It's not like there's a guidebook for this, and the pedal industry crosses over so many other music industries. It's complicated. You kind of assume, your average guitar player or teenager that plays pedals, you assume that all these companies, all these builders, that they're all big. You just assume like, oh man, that company, that big company, and to you, there's no difference between Solid Gold Effects or Old Blood Noise Endeavors or EQD, unless you follow those people and and then you get to NAMM and you see these mega booths for, Boss, Behringer, people that have their own basements, and then you see like a table for another company and somewhere upstairs, and it puts a lot of things into perspective. When you live online and you don't, you have to go to these kinds of events, you can kind of create your own hype, your own size, and kind of live outside that space being compared, to everyone else. I don't know. Maybe that's not a thing.
It's definitely a thing to some degree, but it's also not always the greatest indicator. Because, for instance, like Behringer is a great example. They're one of the biggest music gear companies in the world.
Sure.
Regardless of how anybody feels about them, they are one of the biggest companies in the industry. They're huge. They haven't been at NAMM at all for the last 2 or 3 years, somewhere in that ballpark.
Really, yeah. I didn't see anything from them, but I think I just thought I had heard somebody talking about it. But I did see some Boss stuff there.
Boss is always there. I don't imagine that Boss ever will not be there because of the type of company they are. But Behringer, Music Tribe, which is the parent company of Behringer, TC Electronic, Midas, a handful of other things,
right?
And they always had this. I mean, like this small city set up in the middle of NAMM. And one year they just straight up were like, we don't see a value in doing this anymore.
They don't have to.
They don't have to. And I would argue that most people don't have to anymore. I just did an episode with Josh from JHS, and we were talking about this same thing. And he said after that same NAMM that we're talking about, he, looked at how much he spent, which he said was around 50 grand.
Whoa.
And he got all his stuff loaded up with his team, and he told them, we're not doing this again. Like, we're not coming back next year. At least not like this. We're not having a booth. We're not doing this thing.
He didn't.
But he decided that before Rona was it was a thing, but before we really knew the extent of it,
right, for sure.
In retrospect, NAMM was probably a super spreader event.
I was going to say that a little while ago, and I got sick when I came back. Devon Blue, he got sick there and had to leave early. I remember. It's crazy.
I mean, that's the thing about NAMM is NAMthrax has been a thing for a long time. Like, I got it really bad the first year I went. I came home and just infected my whole family with this horrible flu. It was gnarly. And, so it's already kind of that's it's perfect breeding ground. Everybody's touching the same guitars. Everyone's breathing on each other. It's just it's a petri dish. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But no, I still had a blast. I wish we could, that's the one thing I personally wish we could have back, with NAMM, since now I'm getting, a little bit more clearance to, come to these events. Is I would just like to see people, I would like to be there on your couch next to you, or on a couch at NAMM. hanging out with you or hanging out with Ian or Devon or Alex, or any of these builders that I've worked with. Because I think, the relationship, the human physical relationship aspect of everybody working together is important. There's something to be said for that.
That's the true value in it. And that's really, if you talk to anyone that's done it,
that's all it
times,
is.
That's all you care about. Nobody cares about any other aspect of it. And I wonder, and Brian Wampler and I have talked about this for a long time, and Josh and I were also talking about this on that episode. Like, maybe we need to take control ourselves. Maybe we need to have our own event once we can safely have events. Like, why doesn't everybody come to? I always bring up Portland because Portland's like a real pedal city. Like, there's been small events that were massively successful here in Portland with
so many builders.
Yeah. And the interest level is really high in the population that's around here. And so it's like, why don't we have a pedal event? We get a bunch of food trucks, we get a bunch of builders to come have some booths. We make it so you can actually buy and sell stuff on the showroom floor, so to speak. And we just have a great time hanging out, and we don't charge $400 billion for a booth. Like,
is that the official? Doable. That's the official rate, $400 billion.
Well, I think
for a table at NAMM. Wow! All
so.
Right, folks, there you heard it, right out of Blake's mouth.
I can tell you this: I can't remember exactly what the numbers are, and my listeners have heard this before, but I've done a pizza party at NAMM every year, and we quickly outgrew the restaurant that we were reserving. By the second year, it was like, okay, we can't come back here. We completely took it over. And so for 2020, I had over 100 people that had RSVP'd for it. And I was trying to do it through the official channels. I was trying to go through NAMM and get a room up top for an hour or two and do it all on the up and up. And I can't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere between like 8 and 12 grand that it was going to cost me for the room and to have them cater the pizza and all that jazz. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. I'll go buy a few $100s in pizza and do it on the sidewalk. Like, I'm not paying that kind of money for this.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
It's insane. So I didn't. And that's just one of the many fees they try to get you with there. So I think they need to readjust their business model. I do love NAMM. I do love the excitement and the fun that comes with it. But man, I think it's kind of a dinosaur.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Here we are in our virtual, boxes separate from each other, and we've still been making things happen. Yeah, a lot of innovation has come out in 2020. A lot of innovation is coming out in 2021. My desk is loaded right now with stuff that's coming out in March and April, and I'm pretty behind. But obviously, people have been thinking. They've been home. They've had time to maybe work on those plans that they had put aside, and save for a rainy day. So it's interesting seeing that, come out of this.
Definitely. Well, we've been talking about a lot of, NAMM-centric stuff, but we really need to get into you. What's your story? You've done a lot of things. I saw you just one day, all of a sudden, just making excellent gear demos. But I know you didn't just wake up one day and start making excellent gear demos. So what is your story?
No, I started by making pretty terrible demos to begin with. Gosh, where do I go back? When I was a baby.
Wherever the guitar came into your life, that's a good place to start.
That, what? Thank you. Right. That helps me. That gives me a good starting point. My grandfather has had a Zydeco band for 30 somewhat years. I mean, the man has probably played 500 plus shows in the last 35 years. And he's a collector, kind of a gear nerd, and he buys, sells, trades, deals with a lot of firearms too. And he'll do a lot of firearm trades for like guitars and accordions and violins. And he was the kind of guy that was like the band organizer. He booked the shows and brought gear. He would have like different musicians show up. Zydeco music's pretty simple. So, you call a bass player up from Thibodeau or down the bayou, and he doesn't have to go rehearse with you guys. Like, you know, they're playing like the same 17 songs, you know, that people have been playing for decades, you know, Cajun music.
Right.
And so he would stockpile instruments in this big studio space that he had at his house. And I lived pretty close to them. So, you know, one day he gave me a guitar. I was like 12. He gave me like a Squire Strat, you know, it's like what everybody starts off with. And I was pretty excited. I think I played flute for a long time before that. And I grew up like playing piano. So, you know, cause I do like synth stuff too. And, then, you know, fast forward a year later, I upgrade to some better guitars. The man had like 30 guitars in his studio. And I start to quickly realize like he's got a treasure trove of gear, you know, in his space. And he would record bands. He was the only like recording studio for, you know, miles around. So he taught me how to record. I started writing songs. You know, I never took any lessons. I just kind of, you know, would watch like Weezer music videos and, you know, look up tabs. I think Ultimate Guitar was just a thing at the time. And you could go on the internet and like find these crappy tabs that people were terrible at writing out, but, you know, would generally give you a sense of things and learn all these Rage Against the Machine, System of a Down, Pink Floyd, Beatles, you know, stuff. And, started recording like songs. So this kind of more, you know, gets into like writing for me because, you know, I guess that's my shtick, right? That's my thing with these demos is that I'm, you know, writing songs. And I knew I needed to like establish that early on, by the way, just with the demo thing, because at the time that I started 2 years ago this month, I noticed a lot of people weren't doing that. You know, a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with that, but not everybody has the capacity, you know, or the time or the interest to be able to, you know, whip up like all original content all the time, you know. And it doesn't necessarily show off a pedal any better than, you know, a cover would or say something like that. But I probably wouldn't be interested in doing this at all if it wasn't something where I could, you know, use as a creative outlet. Right. So that studio was where, you know, I started writing a lot. And I would make these like terrible records at like 14, 15, 16. I'd go and stay with my grandparents for a week and hole myself up with, God, I had the XP300 space station and I didn't even know it was just like this big yellow thing that was in a box, you know, and synths and electronic drum sets. I would invite friends, from down the street that knew how to sing or play violin, things like that. And then I'd make these records that, you know, when I say make a record, I mean, I was like very roughly mixing this stuff. I didn't know what mastering was. I didn't know any specs, you know, or how loud things should be. You know, I just kind of mixed the taster to my ear. And then I would go to school the next week and I would sell my CDs in high school, you know, so that kind of became my thing. And, you know, finally started some bands. And my dad passed away in Hurricane Katrina. So for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty close to New Orleans in Louisiana. I live in Baton Rouge, which is about an hour north. So we don't have all the craziness that goes down in New Orleans, but we have a lot of the music talent. We had a pretty good scene for many years, and a lot of musicians from New Orleans actually live here. And then we got affected by Hurricane Katrina quite a bit. My dad passed away and I needed something positive in my life. I knew, you know, I was 16, I was a sophomore in high school, and the thought just struck me. I was listening. Are you familiar with Streetlight Manifesto? It's like
yeah, definitely.
Oh, good. I don't really know that many people anymore these days that know that name, but I was listening to a lot of Streetlight Manifesto, Real Big Fish, and, God, a thousand other, you know, indie ska bands that I think I was like torrenting off of Napster. And I was like, I need something positive. I want to start a ska band. I just want to make music that is energetic, is fun. And then it all started from there, you know, did a ska band for like a few years. And just I never was not in a band from that point forward until I started demoing pedals. 2 years ago. So, you know, that just led me to writing a lot. I quickly kind of realized that that was my passion. That's what got me up in the morning. That's what excited me. If I if everybody else would go to bed, my roommates would go to bed, as I get into college and stuff like that. And I would be the one that was just staying up through the night recording. Dropped out of college, a different band that I had formed by the time I got into college, called Cohen and the Ghost. We had gotten a pretty big following in Louisiana, and we were pretty, established. So we went on a tour. I dropped out of college to go on tour. I never officially dropped out. I just stopped going. I think I emailed my teachers. To this day, I don't even know what my file says. I have no idea. I think I woke up one morning and I was like, I had this inflated ego. My band was doing so well, like in my bubble, in our city, in New Orleans and in Louisiana. And I think as a 19-year-old, I thought, well, it's only uphill from here, right? I can only become a successful musician from here. So I emailed my professors and I told them I got signed to a major label and see you later.
And did you get signed to a major label?
No.
It's weird that's like a barometer in a lot of people's mind for success is
Sure.
whether or not you're signed to a major label, when some of the most successful artists that I'm like close with, that I could text message and talk with, are not signed to a label at all.
It used to be. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it used to be more of an important thing. And speaking of labels, I get back from this tour and, was seeing probably some of the peak of my musical success in around here. And I decided to start a record label. So that is actually something that I did for a while. Now, I use the term record label vaguely. There were no written contracts. It was more that I had a studio space, and this was actually crazy. This fell into my lap because I had all this gear that my gramps pretty much just said, here, you can take this. I brought it up to Baton Rouge, where I was living, and I needed a space to record. I started off in my friend's like a workshop. And he had like a screen printing business, and he had a workshop. And I got my first clients over MySpace, just advertising like, hey, I'm the guy from that local band that you guys know I'm recording. And so like rock bands, garage rock bands, punk bands, local bands started coming in and tracking with me. And then eventually I moved into this TV station that wasn't active anymore. And their weather room, their green screen room, and the studio room that was attached to that had been open and not used for years. And this really kind lady let me use this space as a studio for totally free, just out of the kindness of her heart. I think she thought she was sort of like contributing to the arts in the city. And so I made a living recording bands for years, just flying by the seat of my pants. I never read a manual. I wasn't like studying YouTube videos. Everything was just, through experimentation. And I look back at those recordings and they sound like total garbage, but you live, you learn. So point just being, these bands are coming through. I was recording so many of them. We had all this talent. And like I said, there's so many good musicians. There were so many good songwriters in the city. I was like, I need a collective. I need to bring them all together. And I got a crew together. We started booking shows for these bands. They agreed to be a part. It was called Phantom Party Records. And the bands that agreed to be a Phantom Party band would agree to come record their albums over here. They would promote for us. We would promote from them. And the scene in the city was just like banging for, I don't know, it was short-lived, probably about a year and a half. Things went south. We weren't making any money. So it was purely a passion project, and I think the other guys had to put on their big boy pants and say, look, we just don't have the time that it takes to run this, and maintain it. So no, I did not get signed by a major record label. I've been DIY, baby, this whole ride.
It's a very interesting thing that I talk about all the time on this show, and the listeners are probably really tired of me talking about it, but I just don't see the necessity of that infrastructure anymore. You know, I understand it for some people, and Corey Wong actually on his episode, he helped me understand why, because he's more wired like me. Like, let's just do it. You know, we'll put in the work, we'll put in the time, we'll make the investment, and we'll do it ourselves. And that's how he's wired. But he helped me understand that, like, we're kind of the weird ones in this, like in the music industry in particular. Like, a lot of people just want the flexibility and the space mentally and physically to just create. And that's really all they're good at. They're not good at any of the other stuff, and they don't have any interest in getting good at the other stuff. And, you know, you've got to respect that, because, you know, some of our most important art has been created by people. I would argue even maybe most of our most important art has been created by people that with that kind of wiring. And that helped me kind of understand, like, okay, that I need to get off my high horse a little bit about the whole you don't need a label ever thing, because some people do. Some people do need that assistance and that backing.
It takes a certain kind of person, you know, with great amount of drive and motivation and resources and skills and the ability to learn things on the fly to be able to bring themselves, you know, up from the ground up without the help. You know, and I guess we're really talking more about being like a successful, say, you know, songwriter or music artist. You know, this isn't really pertaining to demos, obviously, or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, you know, what's funny is I teach kids music, right? And this is something I've been doing for 10 years in the middle of, you know, doing everything else I've done over the last 10 years, film industry. For several years, I was a sound mixer in the film industry and composer of very, you know, like terrible indie films and just all low level stuff. But teaching kids for 10 years, you know, you get into some interesting conversations, and sometimes when you've been doing it as long as I have, you find yourself unloading maybe, you know, a little bit more than you should. When a kid asks a question, you know, and I had a student, she's maybe 9 yesterday, and she was telling me she wanted to go to a Harry Styles concert. I think he's one of the singers from One Direction who kind of took off and did his own thing. And he's coming to Texas, which is close enough to us for her to be able to go. But she was like sad because the tickets for Harry Styles were $300. And so then I started explaining to her about why music tickets and stadium and concert tickets are so expensive, because of the shift in income for music artists, moving away from CD sales, record sales, things like that, to pretty much just being royalties and concert revenue, you know. And so the price of tickets for concerts has gone up. And then, of course, scalping. So I was explaining, like, scalping, you know. I'm like, well, you see, you know, the tickets go for sale, but then these other people, these bad people, they buy them. And then they sell it for more. And she's looking at me like, I don't understand.
I just wanted to complain about Harry Styles tickets prices. That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
Please, Mr. Hartman, please stop. Please stop it.
It is. It's to that point now, you know, though. That's the only way you can make a real living, you know.
Well, and that's the other side of it is, you know, that is definitely the narrative is touring and concert revenue is the main thing. And that is definitely true to a degree. But I've also talked to enough people at this point to realize that, especially at the smaller non-Harry Styles level of things, most tours don't make any money. So
I heard you talking about that exact thing. Who are you talking to? So one of your podcasts recently.
It's been a few episodes I've talked about it with, so I'm not exactly sure. It could have been a few different people.
Yeah, well, you know, I guess it depends. You know, I've grown up around bands, and all the bands that are my friends in this area that have done van tours, and of course my own tour, my one Eastern U.S. tour that lasted a month. Yeah, we came back with negative $400.
Right.
You know, but I think when you're signed to a label, you go on a tour, I would imagine you do get, you know, hopefully 50%, maybe 60% of, you know, the income that comes from those stadium tickets. So as an artist, I would hope that you, at least at that point, do make some money. T-shirt sales, record sales, merch sales, at least, all that stuff. I think
it's doable. I think it's extremely challenging. I think it's not as cut and dry as what the general narrative is like, go on tour to make money. It's like, okay, but there's a lot that goes into that. And, you might end up playing, a show. For instance, your band did really well in your local area, but if you ever made it to Oregon, there's a good chance that nobody had heard of you before, and vice versa. There's plenty of local Portland bands that do great around here, and as soon as they leave the state, it's ghost town.
Oh yeah.
It's a tough thing. We talked about off the recording how it's tough. The rock star life is tough, and I am not cut out for it personally.
And so that actually brings me back around, because that is the reality, I think, for a lot of creatives. Some people just don't have that DNA. I know people that do, and there's this guy Andrew Martin, who was in a band called Twin Killers that was very successful around here, and then they turned into this band called Moon Honey that was very successful around here. They moved away. He ended up joining this other band, and I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but he's doing like tours, or he was doing tours internationally, and he's like an awarded guitarist now. Fender endorses him, and this dude looks like white Jimi Hendrix, dresses like, his hair is always teased. I swear, he goes to bed and he wakes up in the morning and he's got like a gold chain. He's wearing like a V-neck button-down shirt with the top 3 buttons unbuttoned.
I like it.
Like as skinny as a tooth, and he just lives that lifestyle. That's his persona. He breathes it. When he's on stage, he's a freak. He's like sliding, he's climbing amps. And yeah, being in bands after the label, and continuing, to try and make it in a band. I did realize at a point, I'm 31 now, so I was 29 when I started demoing pedals, and that was about the time that I think I had a kind of wake up call, and I realized no one's coming out to these shows anymore. All my friends are not 19, they're not 20, they're not like looking for something to do on the weekends, and unless you have the money and the freedom, and the band members that have the money and the freedom and the time to, invest in touring, to physically go spread your name out, and all the other things that go along with DIY, musicianship, and trying to make yourself as a band or as a songwriter, then there's really not much chance that you're really going to see a whole lot of success outside of, like we're talking about, your own personal bubble. So I think I woke up one day and I just said to myself, I'm tired of writing songs. And at this point, this has been 16 years since I've been writing and for each project that I've been in. And I think I might have written, with compositions included for films and stuff, maybe 300 songs, with lyrics, full blown out stuff, fully arranged, on hard drives and loopers and just saved and tossed around. And I was just kind of tired of nobody listening. It's hard. It's hard to just post your stuff out on the internet and say, hey, I put out something new today. I really put a lot of work. I created this. MySpace used to be great for that. MySpace isn't around anymore. People used to actually listen on MySpace. So I thought, if I attach my writing to a product, and I love pedals, so don't get me wrong. Like there was totally an excitement in it there for me, because I've been like a pedal board enthusiast and fanatic for years already at this point. It's like, if I attach myself to a product, then at the very least I'll get like maybe 100 views, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody will click on this.
Right. Not for me, because they want to hear the thing, but at least they'll listen to it.
But at least they will listen to, I know that, God, that sounds so desperate, right? But
I understand.
That's where I was at.
I get it.
Yeah.
And that's what started, what was the first demo that you did?
Well, so I mean, I think I got the, I did like 6 at the same time. I got this idea, you know, to do the pedal demos. And when I got it, I was so excited. I think sometimes I'll have these epiphanies in my life where I'm just like, when I met my wife, for example, I just knew that she was going to be the one that I was going to marry. And I did. I married her. And that's just the way that my life goes. And then I'll go long treks of time having no clue what's going on or what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, I wish there were more of them, but I had that epiphany, and I started going on Reverb and getting on Instagram, following a lot of companies, you know, trying to figure out what are some buzz pedals, you know, what's going on. I mean, and I had a pretty good idea because I was following a lot of this stuff, and I had a pedal board that was pretty well outfitted. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know, when you're coming into this stuff, you kind of assume that every company's big. Every company is worth doing work for, or you know, putting a pedal up to work with. So I got the Alpha HAWT from Old Blood Noise Endeavors. I got the Volante from Strymon. That was the very first one I ever published, was Volante. I already was a big Spaceman fan, and I ordered a Nebula and a Mercury 4 boost. Nebula is like their octave fuzz that they had for a while. I got a Rainbow machine, and I got an Alexander Radical DX delay. So those were the first 6 pedals that I set out to do something with. And so it's pretty wild, actually, what happened. I published the Volante demo, and I published the Spaceman Nebula demo. These were just shot with my iPhone 6, the front camera, right? The crappy camera. And we were doing construction in our dining room. And so there was no panels on the walls. I had like an air conditioner vent in the background, totally different angles. I didn't color it. I sent it off to a friend who edited it for me, and he was like, "Hey, do you want some text in this?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, text. You know, that'd be a good idea." You know, because I knew I didn't want to talk. That was like one thing I set out in the beginning of this to establish. I was telling the Old Blood Noise Endeavors guys about this on my live stream the other day. I think I had a couple simple ideas that I wanted to like get across. I wanted it to be a song in context with, you know, full band arrangement, right? So you can hear the pedal in context with stuff. I wanted it to be original, no talking, short, so it's digestible, you know, just the way things are moving and how fast things are moving. Everybody only has a few minutes to spare. And with that, I guess, you know, I need text. So my friend just threw some text on there. I think I texted him what to say, and he like slapped it together. So day 1, Strymon comments on it. And to me, that meant the world. That was like, oh my God, Strymon recognized me. Like, I'm going to be a Strymon guy now.
Right.
That's it. I'm getting gear, you know? But then even better, even beyond that, you know, what really happened is that Zach from Spaceman messaged me like 3 hours later. I was on my way to an orthodontist appointment. 3 hours later, messages me and he goes, "Dude, I love that demo. Could I send you this new pedal that we're working on for a release that we're having, you know, in like a month and a half?" And that was it, man. I mean, that blew my mind. That was, you know, I think at the time I was just like, yeah, you know, I did it. I made something good. And then looking back now, I'm like, that was just freaking lucky, you know, like I don't know how this guy saw that and thought, you know, this would be something. So thank you, Zach. And I've told him this many times, but I'm like, I mean, thank you for believing in me. Thank you for just giving me a chance, you know, and doing that. That really started. And I think that motivated me to do more. And it wasn't long after that Alex Fletcher, our mutual friend, right? Mm-hmm. He was working for Solid Gold Effects. And I had done a couple more demos. I had reached out to a couple more companies. And of course, I'm getting, you know, cold shouldered by companies because companies deal with this stuff on a daily basis. Like, hey, can I demo? Can you send me free product? You know, or like,
oh man,
hey, right.
I'm intimately familiar with this process.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry if I'm derailing the conversation a little bit.
No, please.
It's one of those things, man. It's sometimes we I manage a lot of inboxes, as a lot of people are aware, and some things. And I'm not saying that this is you. Obviously, I like what you do, but a lot of things, I'm sorry to say it this way, that they're not worth replying to. You know, it's like I can tell, like I'll look at one inbox from one company that I manage and another inbox from another company I manage, and I see that the same person messaged both companies with the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes forgetting to change the name of the company and why they're contacting them. Yeah.
No.
And I'm just like, you know what? I'm not even going to waste my time to tell you no. I'm just going to delete it because I don't care. Like, you know, you didn't even care enough to change the words, you know. It's amazing how that still happens. And I was talking with Jack DeVille about this yesterday from Mr. Black, and I was like, don't these people realize that in this industry, like, everyone talks to each other? Most of these people are friendly with each other in some way, shape, or form. At least friendly enough that, like, if Jamie at Earthquaker gets something ridiculous into his inbox, you know, there's a decent chance that someone else is going to hear about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway, random tangent, but sorry, continue.
Well, I mean, it's still a thing, you know, and we could probably get into probably one thing I would imagine some of my followers would like me to talk about, because I get messages about it a lot, are like how to get into pedal demoing, you know, and what should I do? How do I be creative, or how do I get over imposter syndrome and feeling like, you know, people actually want to listen to my stuff? So maybe we can come back to that. But I
was going to say, you get over that? I didn't know you did.
Right. I think you have to forge a different path, you know. And Andy Othling and I were talking about this, and Dan from Old Blood just the other day, about imposter syndrome, because that was a specific question one of my followers was asking me on there, and Dan had a lot of really nice words to say about it, and I think I said something, but I didn't really quite get my point across, and we kind of changed topic. But you know, to avoid imposter syndrome, you can't do something derivative. You can't be trying to be, you know, for me, I'm not a blues riffer, you know, like I'm not someone who ever grew up listening to the blues. And that's just me. Like, I have nothing against blues music. And obviously it's the roots of, you know, everything that we, you know, listen to. But I think it's just where my headspace was at when I was a teenager. I was trying to find more experimental stuff. You know, I kind of would turn away from that. And so I never grew up being like a very pentatonic based, like, guitar player. And so you don't see it in my stuff, right? It doesn't really come out. Now, I would have imposter syndrome if I was trying to play like RJ Ronquillo, you know, who's an immensely better guitar player than myself, and
than most people.
Most people, right? So I might have some imposter syndrome, like, oh, I'm showing off this overdrive, and I'm trying to wank out this. For people that are really, really good guitar players, you know, that's fine. My interest, and I feel like my talent is mostly like light and creativity, and I can handle like most things on the guitar. So, you know, if you are trying to make demos, you're trying to be a creative, you got to find your own thing, your own sound. And then beyond that, you just got to hope that people are interested in listening to it. And that's where just being smart about how you know, present yourself, film yourself, how you edit things, who you work with comes into play. So that's what I would say about that. But where were we? We're talking about.
Where were we? Oh yeah, you were saying that your followers often ask you, and this is a very common question that I get when I'm like, you know, I'll post in the Facebook group. You know, I'm like, hey, you know, Rhett Scholl's coming on the podcast, and that's like the number one question anytime there's a YouTuber, is how do I get into this? Like, how do I do this? How do I find my way? How do I get people to want to send me things? How do you even get started? And the answer, I'll let you answer that, but the answer is usually kind of the same for all of these people. So I want to hear your take on it.
Well, I can't speak with a whole lot of authority because I haven't, ascended to the level, that Rhett Shull has. And man, he's on like a whole new track with his new studio space and live stream and stuff. But, I did get started. I did do that. I got that far, and I am 2 years in, and I do work with a lot of builders. And generally I think they say nice things about me. I hope they like working with me. But yeah, I did it the old fashioned way of just kind of, slamming my shoulder against the door and saying, "Hey, I'm here. I do this." And that was just me not being very educated about, the YouTube world, not doing a whole lot of research, not having a photography or a videography background, not having a nice camera, things like that. Started shooting with my phone. I think that the first step is the hardest thing for people to make. So regardless of what that first step is, obviously it doesn't have to be perfect because mine wasn't. You just have to take that leap. You have to create something. Start there. I'm in a Discord group with a lot of demo people, and we talk about this a lot, and I think there's like a running joke, not a running joke, but like we comically say, make 10 videos that look professional, self-market, garner some interest yourself, get a reasonable amount of views, then make your first email to a company. You have to have something. You have to have something. You can't just cold email these companies and say, "Hey, I would like to demo your product, blah, blah, blah." I've had, they don't care about your background. They don't know where you came from. Like at the end of the day, you need to sell pedals. And a lot of builders are small crews. They don't make a ton of profit every year, I would imagine, and so every pedal that they send out is valuable to them. And they're, and then for some companies it's different, sometimes sending out a pedal is like nothing, but it's that first step. You gotta at least start making, your videos, gauge how people are responding to that. And then that was me. I gauged, 8 videos in, and the Reddit community is responding really well. I think the Reddit R pedals, I'm sure you're familiar with that forum, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Like R guitar pedals.
Yeah, I don't think
right?
they like me in there for some reason, but
When they get a whiff, when they get a whiff of paid promotion or endorsement, or official channel, things kind of go south there. You've got a lot of, I don't know why, there's just the disdain for, and the paid promotion goes to like a whole nother topic of chatter this week. If you followed that YouTube video that created a wave, but 7-8 videos in, I'm getting some good views there, but I think I thought to myself, like, I need to do something wilder, something bigger. It can't just be pedal demos. And so my crazy self, I go on Reverb and put on credit like 15 fuzz pedals from 15 different companies that I just kind of like surfed around, thought, oh, that looks cool. I borrowed some other fuzz pedals. I already had some, and maybe I've only bought like 12. And I got up to 19. So I had like 19 in my hands. And I published this video, which took me 3 days to film and was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it was called 19 Songs for 19 Fuzzes. And it was like maybe a 6-minute video. And I used 19 fuzz pedals. And it was this one never ending song. Sorry, it was not never ending. It ended, but it was a continuous song, I should say. And it was nuts. I published it. I assumed that at least, I think my thought was, if I tag 19 companies, one of these companies will respond back. Those are my odds, at least one. And Alex from Solid Gold Effects saw that video, and a lot of companies did share it, and that was really cool of them. But he saw it and he emailed me, and he immediately was like, "Hey, I want to send you a batch of Solid Gold Effects pedals." Sent me six SGFX pedals like the next week. And it was what I needed. It was my motivation to push it further, get better, change my filming setup, adapt my recording setup, make better quality videos. And so to anybody else that's out there, creating, if someone gives you a break, take it, use it as a sign, use it to push yourself. And things only went uphill from there. You know, more companies started approaching me. Alex started working for Mass, and now I do demos for like every Mass builder. I get messages from builders, you know, every week reaching out with new stuff. And that's what it takes. You know, you have to constantly be willing to improve yourself, to engage with your audience, be ready to answer a lot of emails, a lot of messages, be ready to be looking at your phone a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. I think my
least favorite part.
The screen time report for my iPhone was 7 hours and 21 minutes a day. Woo! Good stuff.
It's bad, man. And what, do you have kids, right? You have a kid?
I have 2 kids. Yeah.
2. Wow. Right. And when you have kids, for me, I feel guilty, you know, like if I'm home and he's home and I'm on my phone, oh man, it's, I'll get off of it and I'm just like, why do I have to be on Instagram right now? Why am I on Instagram right now?
You know, for me, it's a little bit different, you know, having been in a prior job where I just was not home like at all. I mean, I'd be home, you know, in the evenings and whatever, but for me, it feels, I feel okay with it because I make the time to do stuff with them, you know, especially my older kid, you know, and and I actually have that flexibility to be able to do that. Whereas before I had no flexibility. And so, you know, it's one of those things where I think
it's a better position.
Yeah, exactly. I think about it, I'm like, oh, I spent, you know, 12, 14 hours working today, but I didn't have 3 hours of commute time like I used to have, you know. I was actually physically here, you know, when I take a lunch break, I'm hanging out with my family, you know. Sometimes we'll, you know, okay, well, I've got things kind of in a good stopping point for today because it never ends. But, you know, I've got things at a decent stopping point. Let's go to the park, you know. And so while I do spend a lot of time plugged into the internet, I do have the flexibility and ability to be present and do the things I'm supposed to do.
That is valuable. I mean, it's very valuable. During COVID, you know, my son wasn't at daycare. He's here with me all the time. And this happens if he's sick and he has a sick day, you know, and I shoot all my stuff during the day. If I have a video launch, right? Like, so say I have, you know, Alexander's dropping a new pedal and it's supposed to be at like 11 a.m., something like that, right? I will have to sit him down with a snack and a cartoon and then proceed to do the hour-and-a-half long, you know, list of things that it takes to launch a video, you know, because it's not just as simple as like having it ready for publish and hitting publish. It's like hit publish, cut an edit that you can make for your Instagram feed, type up all the hashtags that you need for that post, make a story post. You know, now it's reels that are involved. Okay, let's go to Reddit Guitar Pedals. Let's type up a synopsis of why you did this demo because you have to write something in your post. Let's post it and share it. Facebook, you know, oh, people are messaging me. Oh, I got to respond. And then it's like 2 hours later, you come out of this wormhole and you're like, why is it so hard? Why is there so much? It should just be as simple as hitting publish. So there's a lot to the creative life. There's a lot to demoing that is more than just, cool, I have some pedals. Let me make some cool sounds and I'm going to film a little, you know, snippet of me noodling around. There's so much more, really. Yeah.
And then the crazy thing, and this is something I have a very tiny YouTube channel, and I put a lot of work into it last year, and I did find what's wonderful about YouTube is that, you know, the more work you put into it, it does reward you. It does, you know, things work the way you imagine they work over there most of the time. And what I found, though, that is most frustrating is seemingly the more effort I would put into making something and creating something that I thought was cool, the worse inevitably the video did. And if I did an unboxing or some dumb thing that didn't take very long, of course, that's the one that everybody watches. And I don't know why that is.
Oh yeah, and it hurts. It hurts. And you have people on TikTok that will just do a water bottle toss and have it land, and then they get a million views, and that took them 1 minute, or a few seconds, and then meanwhile us creatives over here are spinning our gears and spilling our blood, and yeah, that's the way it goes.
So you'll like this. I've been doing a little bit on TikTok. So I made a video. This was probably 2 months ago. I made a short video, not thinking it was going to do anything. Just saying like, hey, here's this Ranger Effects mini bar. This crazy thing you can pour. I don't even remember. It took me literally 30 seconds to shoot.
Well, that pedal gets attention.
Yeah, it does. So I was like, here's this thing. You can pour liquid in it. How crazy! I don't even remember exactly what the video was. It was dumb. It wasn't of any consequence. I wake up in the morning, and it's got 60,000 views. I think as of right now, it's got 220,000 views. And
my God!
And the actual videos that I've done two different ones where I did just straight water and one where I did coffee. I think the water one did all right. I got 20,000 views. The one where I did coffee and showed actually what it sounds like, it's only got 1,600. And now this sounds like a lot more than it actually is. People need to understand that TikTok is even more algorithm driven than YouTube in my mind. You can have 0 followers on TikTok, and this is kind of the beauty of it. You can have 0 followers on TikTok and get 1 million views, potentially. Not saying it's going to happen, but it does happen more often than other platforms. And so, but I just find it so strange. I'm like, the content that is just kind of the teaser did great. And then I did a follow-up video because I didn't really explain. A lot of the comments were, what is this thing? What? I don't understand what it is. So I did a follow-up video. I'm like, wow, I didn't expect this to blow up. Here's what this pedal does. And I'll show you some sounds when I have time to actually record them. And the teasers did way better. I think the first one did 220. I think the next one was 120. And the rest are just it's so strange. The ones I actually put some work into got nothing.
Well, it's such a passerby thing. I think TikTok. The people that, especially TikTok, but that is also the reality of almost all these platforms to some degree now, which can be a bit defeating sometimes as a creative. You post something, or even if a new product comes out, a new pedal comes out, there's buzz for a day or 2 or 3, and then it's the world moves on. Just like that, it's gone. The world has moved on. So you either have to just keep rolling with it and keep creating, or take it to heart and just and then maybe in that case it's not for you. You kind of have to grow some skin there. Some tough skin.
Yeah. And that I have to say is what's beautiful about podcasting. Podcasting, at least from my experience, is so insane. Mm-hmm. The amount of time that people are willing to spend with you because it's more of a passive experience is so much more. So Spotify actually shows me the average listen times and everything. And generally the main episodes for this thing are around an hour, and then there's some intro and outro. So they're usually just a little over an hour in total runtime. And consistently I go to every episode, average listen time 1 hour 2 minutes. Next one 1 hour 9 minutes. Out of an hour 14 episode.
Wow.
It's
wow.
And there's enough data on my Spotify page now.
That's very surprising.
Well,
not saying anything about your show, just surprising just for people in general.
Well, yeah, because YouTube's a minute and a half.
Yes, and I make short videos. Yeah.
I think it is.
I already make short videos and already. Yeah.
I do think it has a lot to do with when you go to listen to a podcast, that you're going to spend more than 10 minutes doing that most of the time. There's not very many podcasts that are under that runtime. I think people expect that they're going to at least They know that if they enjoy what they're listening to, and they're going to spend at least 30 minutes with it, I think is probably general consensus. So if they're really into it, if it's really, making their workday easier or whatever mundane task they're dealing with at that time, I mean, that kind of makes sense. That pencils with how I listen to shows. I pretty much listen. If I have a show I like, I pretty much listen to the whole thing. It might be in bits and pieces here and there, but I do usually finish them.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's why I released my record as well, I haven't released it yet, but by the time people hear this, I will have released it. That's why I'm releasing it as a podcast episode. So.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Well. Wow. That's smart.
People are probably going to get really tired of hearing the story by the time that this comes out. But since I haven't told you, basically, I've been trying to talk to bands and different people from the music industry into this concept for about 1.5 years or 2 years. Is like, especially if you look at Spotify, the way that people consume music and podcasts is starting to blend together. They're, so much that they are now on the same platform oftentimes. Spotify, for me, Spotify is growing literally every single day. And the other platforms I have to imagine some of that is people leaving, Apple Podcasts, going to Spotify, etc. But basically, I'm like, they're still streamed audio. They're MP3 streamed to your ears the same exact way through the same devices. Yeah. And I was like, why?
No quality loss. So
it's all the same. So why couldn't you release a record as on an RSS feed as a podcast? And if you were an established artist, why couldn't you do that and potentially get a sponsor for it, just like a podcast does, and actually make a little bit off of your record? Why couldn't you do that? Especially somebody who already has listeners. And so I've been trying to talk bands into doing this, and the response generally has been like, that's a really cool idea. And that's pretty much it.
I mean, the only downside I can see is like, not having the ability to skip songs or find the seams.
Well, depending on how you do it, you could. So like my record is meant to be all listened to at once, so I'm not as concerned about that. Mm-hmm. But you could release, you could hypothetically go, like at the top of the record, you could go, this record is brought to you by Jones Soda Company or whatever. They made this whole thing possible. Thank you, blah, 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 blah. And then you could have the next track be another episode. Just like, like I said, it's if you plan it out and release them in order, you could release it exactly like,
I see what you're saying,
like a record. Yeah. And then you could just go to the next episode, which would be the next track. So even that is, it's slightly different, but your listening experience could remain the same. Manageable. So that's what I'm doing. My record, as my listeners are probably tired of me talking about it, but it is available on this feed. Sponsored by Sweetwater, and it will be available only on the podcast feed for the next few months, and then it'll go out to the streaming platforms. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Very cool. Very cool.
That's awesome. I just realized that we're over an hour, and I haven't even got it into the classic questions with you yet. We really just went for it. This has been great.
Do you ever edit these? You ever edit these?
Very rarely.
The conversations?
Very, very rarely. As in almost never, basically.
So what are the classic questions?
The classic questions. Are you ready for those?
Oh yeah, no, I'm totally ready. I've got my headband
Before
on.
we do that, let's let you put up a billboard. What do you want to tell people? You've got a chance to talk to a couple thousand people right now and tell them something. What would you like to tell them?
Oh wow, that's quite a spot to be put on. If you aren't familiar with what I do, at least these days, SpiralCaster plays pedals. That's my YouTube channel, and I take guitar pedals usually one at a time. Although I'm expanding right now. I'm sort of in the middle of doing a new format of video, and I create a song. It's usually more like a series of song parts that I stitch together, song ideas. You could essentially like take different segments out of my song, and one could be the chorus for a hook for a song, or one could be a verse hook for another song. And I will change keys. Sometimes I will change drum sounds, and I stitch things together. But my whole objective is, like, when I sit down with a pedal at the beginning of a filming session or a recording session, is I just will read the manual over. I will spend a good 30 minutes, just playing with the pedal and turning knobs, seeing what it does. What's all the cool stuff? I'll do my best to try and find every notable feature that the pedal has. Like on this, for example, Young Hearts by Polar Bear Effects demo that I just finished. It's going to be published tomorrow. Actually, it will have been published by the time you hear this. It's this delay pedal, and it's got a ton of knobs on the front, and it's got a momentary effects switch on it, like a foot switch. And that foot switch does like 12 different things, just depending on where your toggle switches are set, whether you have this little light engaged, where your attack and release knobs are. I mean, it's nuts. There's no presets on the pedal. So you just have to know, these things. So I kind of take stock of everything the pedal does, and then I try to show at least one example of every sound, thing, feature, function that it can do within this song. If it's a simple pedal, I'll do like a 4-minute track, like an overdrive. And I try not to do those too much anymore, because I pretty much just use overdrive already in all my demos. I much rather demo something wacky and weird. And if it's a big pedal like the Microcosm, the Night Sky, the Arcades, things that just have a lot to it. Obviously, I can't get it all across in 4 minutes, so those will stretch out to 7, 8, sometimes 10 minutes. And I think the whole thing that I want to get across is just showing people in a short amount of time. I think I said, a little bit about this earlier, but short amount of time, everything that this pedal can do in the context of an original song. The original part is irrelevant. I put that in there just so people know that I'm writing original songs, but it's something that I think is cool. And I hope, that as you're listening, and if it catches your ear, you might think, oh, I could do something cool with this. And I started doing this out of me watching all these other pedal demos where people were like starting the video, and it'd be 2.5 minutes before they would even play anything through the pedal. They start playing, and then they will just sit on this one topic or this one knob or this one sound, one feature, for another 3 minutes. And it's like, I just found myself scrolling through, not that there isn't a need for those demos. And actually, a lot of my colleagues still will demo pedals, in ways that are, longer and show all the features. Like those are necessary. They're very important. And there's definitely a type of person that needs that and enjoys that, definitely people that enjoy that. I should say that. And it just, me personally, I find my time, my free time in the day is so short, so brief. It's my circumstances personally. I just don't have the time necessarily to sit down and like really engage. When I do, sometimes I really enjoy longer videos, like on synthesizers. If I ever get a new synthesizer, and I get new ones all the time, I like have to force myself to sit down and watch the demos where people are like really talking deeply about what goes on in the synth, because then I really get a bigger picture of what's going on, and it helps me understand the instrument. But for pedal demos, I think it can be done shorter. I think it can be done quicker. And that's what I try to do. So I hope you guys will go check out some of my videos and, give me a follow and hit me up. I like to talk to people and answer questions and chit chat. So that would probably be about it. Blake, did you have another one?
Yeah, I got a couple more. Are you ready for these ones?
Oh gosh. Okay. I'll make these faster. Okay.
Well, we'll see if you can. Some people can't. This gets intense. First one. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Oh, my favorite Boss pedal. This is a topic that I've gotten some fire on, because I'm not a big Boss pedal user. I don't really have anything against Boss per se. And I will say this, my first pedals, other than that XP300 Space Station Digitac that I had when I didn't even realize that was a pedal, like when I was a teenager, I didn't really know what pedals were. It was just this big yellow thing that made cool, ambient sounds. But my first real pedal that like I bought with my own money, it was while we were on that tour I was talking about earlier. I realized 2 shows in that I was just playing out of my PV Classic, is what I was used to. And I would have like a little overdrive on. I realized I needed to be able to switch overdrive on and off. I needed like a clean setting and an overdrive setting. I didn't have a foot switch for that amp. So I stopped at a Guitar Center and I bought a TU2 tuner. I think that's what they're called, the TU2, TU3, series, and an SD1 overdrive. And I had those pedals for a really long time. Shortly after that, I got the PS5 phase shifter pitch shifter. I'm sorry, the pitch shifter, the PS5 pitch shifter. I still have that pedal. It is beat up to hell. Still works. The knobs, like the top little secondary knobs are bent and they barely turn. But that is still my favorite pedal to like step on and bend. So I would have to say my favorite Boss pedal is probably, and I've had several, over the years since then, probably the PS5.
All right. PS5.
The PS5 pitch shifter.
Oh, like
it's
it.
a bendy pitch shifting machine. It's cool.
Nice. Very nice. All right. This is the one that might be a little bit difficult to condense. And it's the one that people get really heated up about. Families have been broken up. It's a touchy subject.
Don't break up my family.
I'm not going to do it. You might, depending on how you answer this question. So,
okay. Oh God, it's pressure.
What kind of pizza do you like?
Oh man, I am an everything pizza. Like the kitchen floor. That is my answer. The kitchen floor. Put it on there. Meat, vegetables, mushrooms, extra cheese. Maybe hold the sardines. Otherwise, that's me all around.
Yeah.
Man.
How about your crust choices? You like them thick? You like them thin? Or you want it all?
Oh, if I had to go, I would just swing one way or the other. It would be thin, just because you can eat more of it. Why? Who doesn't like to eat more pizza?
I've never met anyone who doesn't like to eat more pizza. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop on this, where like I've had people say like, because of my dietary choices, like I don't eat much pizza, things like that, which I can understand. But I've never had anybody be like, I'm waiting. It may happen one day where someone says, I just don't really like pizza, and I won't be able to tell the
like
episode,
pizza. You can quote me on this. If you don't like pizza, you will not find success in this industry.
I think you're right about that. I think you're right.
So serious right now.
I'll take it even further. You won't find success in most industries.
Yeah.
You might have some success at the anti-pizza brigade annual meeting, and that's about it. And there'll be 3 people there.
It's not even like a gathering or a party or it's just a very formal meeting. Those people aren't very fun.
No. I'm not going to say who I was going to. No, I'm not going to go there. I was going to say somebody that would be there, but I'm not going to say it anymore because it's going too far. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on. This was a really great chat, and
it was my pleasure.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
So, for Cohen, this is Blake, and as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, there you have it, folks. There's another one in the can. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you need more talking, if you need more of these kinds of conversations in your ears, you can go over to Patreon, where you can help support the show for just $5 a month and get extra audio content beamed directly to your ears in the same player you're already using every single week, usually in the form of extended interviews with that week's guests. So please, if you can, slide over to patreon.com/tonemob and help us out. Literally helping keep the lights on. I can't stress that enough. So thank you so much to the patrons. Thank you so much to everyone. And please The thing you can do, even if you can't quite swing that right now, which I understand, times are weird. I get it. I totally get it. If you can't swing that right now, tell a friend. Please share this with somebody. Tell somebody that you think would get something out of this. And it might take several times. I know it took my friend Leon probably 5 or 6 times of telling me to listen to Chasing Tone before I ever listened to an episode so many years ago. And then next thing I know, I'm the co-host of that podcast. Fast forward like 7 years later. So, podcasts can change lives. So please share your favorite show with a friend. Hopefully it's this one or, any of your others. Support your favorite creators. Do what you can, where you can. And sometimes just getting more ears and eyeballs on their stuff is the best thing you could possibly do. All right, everybody. If you have a friend you haven't talked to in a while, give them a call. They might need to hear from you. They might be waiting and just thinking, I wish so-and-so would call me right now. I've been wanting to talk to them for ages, and I just, I hope they call me. So call your friend. Do that. Let's close out with that for this week. Call your friend. All right, bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.